but I stayed hidden, and I'm tired of that. And I think it was just also having seen a couple of friends that I knew I had got support. Because I was shaking and I was like, okay, we're
This is happening.
No. Yeah, because then it opens up a whole new life and a lot of questions that you're like, okay.
Yeah, that's incredible and really, that's exciting actually, and like, it's been so long since I remember. But also too, like, I'm still like, I mean, you still like kind of keep coming out no matter where you go. You're got that representation, like when you start a new job or go to a new gym or go out in public or into like a coffee shop you've never been to. There's always that
opportunity to come out.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's very much a continual process.
Like my heart's racing thinking about like just coming out. You know the story that you tell. You're living those memories. Yeah.
But like, yeah, like mine was just like all the way to the like highest like diving board into the deepest end and I just jumped. I was like, yes, queen. I went straight into like,
I am.
Yeah, just like lost all my baby fat, grew like 5 inches, like out of nowhere, came out, glitter everywhere, dancing on a box.
In film.
Yes, all of it. Gillian? Are you there? Can you hear me?
I would have like a cool answer to that question, like one big thing, but I will say like within the last year and a half, I've just kind of decided like to trust myself and stop feeling like I have to like I don't know, try so hard and be so extra and you know, never make a mistake and things like that. I've just decided that, you know, things are going to be what they are, especially at work. And it's like, you know, I believe in myself, and I think it's really good. I just decided to believe in myself in a way that's brought me like a lot of peace. And you know, like there's all these competitive things about academia, you know, writing articles and getting published and stuff. And I just decided like, it's all going to work out. I'm going to do my best and it's going to work out. And I don't need to like make myself sick with anxiety, thinking that I'm not good enough or whatever. I'm just done doing that. And it's a daily practice, but it's been really nice.
What?
Oh, yeah. She just disappeared on our screen again. Oh. No, you keep going.
Oh, I'm done.
I'm gonna
sometimes that's hourly, like having to trust yourself and make sure that you are, you know, being authentic. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's Wes, do you want to answer this question or do you need to work on something?
No, I'm working on Zoom stuff.
Oh my gosh, you're doing so great. Do you want to pull another card and ask another question?
Yeah.
Let's talk about these. Let's unbox a few things real quick before we get into some big meaty subjects. That sounds hot, meaty subjects.
Meaty.
So meaty.
Ugh. We're getting Gillian up here.
Oh my gosh.
What's something about you that surprises people when they first hear it?
Ooh, Gillian, do you want to answer that one?
I guess I got married extremely young to a cis man, and you know that's been really wonderful. It's a great relationship, but it definitely creates a certain perception of who I am, and people tend to, depending on the context I meet them in, they're either surprised that I got married when I was 24, or they're surprised I married to a man or whatever, you know. And when you talk about like coming out, you know, it's like being bisexual and married to a man. It's like so many assumptions about me, and then I feel like I have to like, you know, work extra hard to be like, no, like I'm part of the community. But then like I'm still here, like being perceived as straight. So, you know, that's definitely like a bunch of little surprises, I think.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Wes?
I'm sorry, what was the question? It's not like me to
What surprises people when they hear it about you for the first time?
Oh, one, that I have a child. Like,
oh yeah.
I should say a young adult now.
That shocks people.
She'll be 21 this summer, which is crazy.
Are you going to take her for a drink?
Well, yeah, I sent her. I asked her she was home this weekend from college, and I asked her what she wanted to do for her 21st.
Does she not drink at all right now? Like seriously?
No, she
does probably.
Like I mean, I drank a lot in high school, which is illegal. You're not supposed to. I know, shocking.
Don't condone
That's
that.
the thing.
Don't condone that.
It is illegal.
And then, so I made sure for her that she felt comfortable with like what drinks were and things like that. So
Also, your stint as a bartender.
right, and so she's tasted drinks and she knows what she likes and stuff like that. So for her 21st, I sent her a picture of like a margarita party bus or these other options for like a party, and she was like, I never even thought about that. I was like, we could hire a bartender and you can have them make all these different drinks and see what type of drinks that you like, and
Go-Go Boys.
right? I was like, it's your 21st birthday, and you like, I don't want her to make mistakes at the sense like you go to a bar and you get drinks that are way too much and you can't control yourself, or people take advantage of you. So I want her to be like comfortable with drinks and to know her limits, and so.
Aww.
Yeah. When we went to Mexico, because it's legal for 18 and up to drink, so when we went to Mexico, like she was ordering drinks, and she doesn't like margaritas and she doesn't like, certain beers. I'm like, it's good for you to know that, because now you're not going to get taken advantage of in that way. Someone trying to give you a drink and you feel like you need to take it. You can be like, sorry.
I feel like at that age I didn't realize that I could not like drinks. So I was like, I have to like all of them. I love them all. They're great. Ooh.
I'm like, if you don't like it, don't drink it. Throw it out. Who cares?
That's incredible.
Yeah. So child, and then other one I would say like goats, like farm animals. Like people are always shocked
Yes.
that I have farm animals. Always shocked.
Well, they're not really yours. You just kind of
that's
live there.
true.
You just kind of live there.
I live there. Like right now, my husband's gone on a work trip, and so I have to take care of the farm animals. And I'm like, you do so much stuff around this house. Oh my gosh. I mean, I do the inside work, but he does all the outside. I'm like, it's a lot.
Yeah. But it's also like you don't have to. Like you choose to do all that stuff. I'm like, why? I just want to read a book and chill.
Yeah. Well, like I couldn't even go to do. Was it the acupuncture and like sound bath on Monday night, because I had to like house sit and like watch the animals and take care of our dogs and stuff like that. It's like, this is fine, everything's fine. It's
Just
fine.
do yoga with the goats.
Didn't you already pay for it?
Yeah.
Did you see if they can like let you do the next one?
I need to do that. I haven't had a chance to follow up.
Yeah.
I need to follow. I'm sure it'll be fine. Montana's great, so I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah, it's like $40.
Yeah, it's fine.
That's crazy. What did you daydream about as a kid that you'd like to make a reality? Anybody want to pick this up first?
Mine was always being on stage.
Ooh.
Well, so in high school and stuff, or like middle school and all of that, I did theater a lot. I can't sing to save my life, which is one of my biggest disappointments. And then I actually did stand-up comedy for 4 years, which is the other thing. People are like, you're
That
funny.
is incredible.
I'm like, I'm raunchy and funny. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I actually want to consider doing it again.
You
But
should.
Yeah.
making fun of myself is fun.
Do you know Jordan Silver?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, look.
She put up like a comedy show together. Like, was it in the summer that we went to? Maybe
Mhm.
it was really good.
It was.
It was
Yeah.
kind of fun.
I had a great time.
She's also very funny.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan is very funny. She's very
Yeah,
smart.
I watch like musicals and stuff, and I'm like, if only I could sing. Or
Can you
just
dance?
lend me. I think I can.
That's all you need.
I'm amazing at dancing. Yeah, I dance around my house all the time, but love being on a stage. That's what I dreamed of.
I left the stage in my early 20s. Wasn't Broadway.
No.
No, it was not. But it was the main stage a lot of the time.
What about you, Wes?
What did you dream about as a kid that you'd like to make a reality?
When I learned about psychologists and therapists when I was like 11 or 12. Like we watched the Sybil movie, I think, at school or something along those lines, and I had no idea that people could have multiple personalities, or that there were all these like spectrums of like ways that people engage. And so I wanted to like help people and like to understand people and something along those lines. So I feel I'm like doing that in a way, and I went to college for that, and so I mean I've pursued that throughout, like trying to find ways to understand people more. So yeah, I feel like I'm doing that. Sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, I feel like you are. What about you, Jillian?
I was like a total horse girl. I loved
Yes.
at the barn, and so that was not a part of my life for a long time when I was like a young adult, but I'm trying to bring that back into my life. Horses.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, I know a guy that has horses.
Like learning to ride, or
I mean, I can ride pretty well, but I actually just got a horse, which has been really good. Something I wanted to do.
Oh,
that is so cool. Wow.
Like you really are making like your
Yeah.
childhood dreams into like a reality. That's incredible. I love that. Oh, it makes my heart like happy.
Let's take this heartfelt moment to do some introductions.
Are we live yet?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've been live.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. Hi.
Hi.
Do you want to start?
Yeah. I'm Wes with Casey Care, and I'm joined with co-host.
I'm Ace, co-host, host number 2. You can follow me on Instagram at ace_wild. We're joined with 2 amazing guests.
Misha, I am with Casey Care. That's how I know Wes, and I just met Ace.
Awesome. And
my name is Gillian Chadwick. I am a lawyer and a law professor at Washington University, where I run a law clinic, so my students represent survivors of gender-based violence in a variety of case types, mostly in Topeka, but some branching out from there as well.
so today we're talking about real-world sexual assault experiences and what that's like. And so the difference of this is, like, we've talked about workplace scenarios. We've talked about just what is sexual assault. And we will have a conversation with Montana McKenzie about virtual spaces, but that's coming at a later date. And so today we're talking about the real world. So, what's it like going to get coffee, or going for a run? I'm thinking like going to the grocery store. These like something that everybody experiences and gets to take part in, but how sexual assault morphs that into like a trauma-inducing state, or a state where you need to protect yourself or try to feel safe when you're doing that. And as a white male, like, I don't experience a lot of the things that I've been reading about that would be like what would a real-world scenario for sexual assault.
Yeah.
So I want to thank Misha for joining us to talk about that, and Gillian to give us some of that grounding perspective over, well, actually that's not really technically sexual assault, to sort of help us understand as we're navigating these real world scenarios where we can actually have an impact.
Yay.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
How do we dive into this?
Deep end, I guess.
Yeah.
What do you want to talk about?
Well, Misha, you approached us about wanting to come on and to share. So
Yeah.
what moved you to do that, to open yourself and to share this with other people?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is a lot of times if someone experiences sexual assault, one of the first things is don't tell people about it, hide it. They put a lot of the weight of shame on the person who was assaulted. And for my own healing, I guess, from what I've experienced, that means I speak out.
Mm-hmm.
To tell people, just because it's very important to me to create a space where people feel like they can have that dialogue, because the amount of messages I get after I post something or share it is pretty incredible from people like, I haven't told anyone this. And there's like a weight lifted of, oh, it wasn't just me, or what happened to me was assault, or the way I feel is okay. But then also now being out as queer and non-binary, the experiences I have around that, it's like a whole different layer than what I've experienced as, socialized female. It's like a whole new layer. And so that's something I also am pretty open about speaking about, because it doesn't get talked about a lot.
Mm-hmm. How
your sexual identity or how you present can actually create another level of risk that I never thought about until I came out.
Jillian, do you want to add to this? I know that we spoke before on kind of in queer culture, sexual assault, like they tend to push under the rug the fear, the shame, everything else. I mean, how do you open up conversation?
I mean, I completely agree. I think that there's such a veil of shame that comes over people who experience sexual violence, whether it's street harassment that may not qualify as, sexual assault under the law, but it can still make people feel really disempowered, unsafe, bad and ashamed. And I think really opening up the conversation and taking the shame out of it, because the survivor obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but the survivor has nothing to feel ashamed about. It's nothing that you've done or brought on yourself or anything like that. And so, I think, and I agree, like it's such a huge community of survivors. And so, speaking out about it, I think that's what's been kind of beautiful about the past even decade, with Me Too and just opening the conversation online and people speaking out about their own experiences is so powerful and important.
No, see, that's one of the first questions I have was like, how do you have this conversation with friends?
I think that technology has probably made it a little bit easier I think in the past, even before we had social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, TikToks, things like that, like people were still taking up blogs and people were letting out on, a www. Diary. Now it's just more public that everyone can read it. My question is a little bit too is, I've seen some of these groups and I've been a part of groups of survivors and pointing out things, but also there is a little bit of a culture of like trauma bonding. And how do you share your experience to help someone else without creating that trauma bond that binds you together where it's not really 100% healing? Gillian, do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, sometimes when I hear people talk about people who have a certain celebrity status following, I think, like, I don't have that, so I'm just speaking from my observations, but, I think when you speak out, then people do kind of encore that, this is what happened to me, confessional moment, and I think that for some people that can be really healing, but I also see people expressing boundaries around that and saying, like, please don't share with me the worst thing that's ever happened to you that you've never told anyone in your life. Like, please find a therapist to share that with. Please find a friend to share that with. And so I think the online thing can create like a false sense of closeness, especially like as a fan, like, and that's the position that I'm usually in. It's like, oh, I'm a fan, and this is like a person, who's a celebrity, or they're, have a huge following on social media, or somebody that I look up to or something. And it's just realizing, like, and I think you just have to think about, like, finding outlets for it that are helpful and not just kind of trauma dump, which is like, just sharing something horrifying, and not saying like you inspired me to now take action and I'm going to do this, or thank you so much for sharing your story, and now I'm going to be courageous and move forward. And that's not a critique of survivors who are really in it, because it's like awful and you're just doing the best that you can, but I think finding those healthy outlets with people that, talking to people that you really care about and care about you, I think is even more meaningful than sharing online,
Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, one thing that, because those trauma bonds can be very real and people can come to you and dump very heavy things on you. And I think the thing people need to realize is if someone just disclosed their own sexual assault, there's trigger points within them.
Yeah.
There's very real trauma and PTSD still. And so you could trigger them. And what one person did when they wanted to disclose to me is they asked for consent first. Can you handle this right now? And I'm like, I love that. But one thing that's also important to me is yeah, it's like that. So that's a no. Ask someone if they can handle. Give them like a trigger warning. Ask for consent in conversation. And but I think it's also like for me when I shared the most recent sexual assault, when I shared that story, I also put in there the steps I'm taking. I'm very involved in therapy. I run. I do all these things, and every day isn't great. I still have days where I'm like, oh, I'm really triggered. I know I need to step away and take care of myself. And that's also, in a way, I guess, to model for people that this isn't just like trauma porn, which is a term I've heard that sometimes people want to hear your story because it's like the train wreck. And, oh, tell me more. And it's like, no.
It's like a Law or SVU that are really addicted to like that whole saga of trauma of child rape and rape victims. And that's something that I've like fell into a hole at night, like watching, and then like got online to like look at some stuff and just like seeing groups and just like, wow, this is like not healthy for a lot of people. But also it can be like, even for victims, like you said, like you telling me something like without my consent, like that definitely could trigger something inside of me. And I'm like, that's like the perfect like way to handle, I feel like, conversations like that is
ask consent.
Consent is just such an important thing.
But also, like, you know, are you telling me, you know, or providing this information? Do you need support? Do you need, you know, or do you just need to vent, just to let it out there, and you don't need me to offer advice or insights or anything along those lines? I think that when you were talking about consent, I was like, you know, that could be a part of that conversation as well. To sort of like let the person know, I'm not doing this because I need your help. I'm doing this just because I need to tell somebody. I've got to just put words out there.
Yeah, and that's important.
Yeah, how do we feel, and like what's the conversation about? Because I've been reading some things, like obviously like I have really stayed away from Facebook just because people have used it as a personal diary, and my stance on that is like, I think that whatever outlet that you find to get through whatever traumatic experience or like happiness that you have, like use that. If you want to talk about your grandma's 84th birthday and how much you love her and the cake was beautiful, then do it.
Yeah.
And if you want to talk about how, you know, something traumatic happened to you or whatever, then you can do that too. And I think that people are like get so upset on Facebook especially. So I stay away from it because like I don't really need to feed into a comment about something that somebody was talking about. Just like if you're in person and somebody's having a conversation that you don't want to discuss or talk about, you excuse yourself politely. You don't like yell at them in their face and tell them you're wrong and blah, 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 blah.
It's so different online.
I know, it's so different. Wow. It's just definitely like, I don't know, like I've seen both sides, and I've seen a lot of people be like, you really shouldn't vent this on social media, and like you really should keep this to yourself, and this is a personal matter, blah, blah, blah. And in my head, I'm just like, that's probably true, but also like, you don't really have to tell them that. Like you can just like scroll past it or like unfriend them or like unfollow them. Like you really don't need to like share that negative like narrative when like they're releasing something like off of their sleeve or out of their heart.
And I think some of those I treat it as like clickbait. You know, it's just, you know,
attention seeking sometimes.
Yeah. So it's like, what's the point in this? Especially if it's a continual thing from that individual. I'm like, all right, unfollow. I don't need to be a part of this anymore.
Yeah, and I think it is important to look at intent, because I know when I first started opening up on social media, it was very much a diary, and then it got to the point of like, why am I doing this? Because you do make yourself vulnerable and you relive your trauma.
Especially
and so
if people comment ugly things to you.
Yeah, and the other thing though, for me now when I post something, it's like, what is my intent? Because sometimes that might be my first step. Like when I came out, my first step was social media because I cultivated a friends list that I trust. And so for me, that was testing the waters of this is a safe way to do this and see, because if it was negative, I can delete it, you know? So it's also important to recognize that at times that could be a person's only safe space to disclose something. And
I agree with
do that.
Yeah.
And me, though, a lot of stuff I've posted that does seem personal, it's more for awareness of letting people know that these things happen and it can be talked about.
And you're not alone.
And you don't have to hide, because when it comes to sexual assault, people just want to hide it away. I can still remember the days of telling a friend, it was like, we don't talk. I'm like, I did nothing wrong. You know, and I think social media has given people a voice, you know, to talk about that. Like the Me Too movement opened up a lot where people went, oh my God, this really is those numbers. Those numbers we see online of 1 in 3 or 1 in 4, they're not real in our minds. We can't grasp that and like personalize it. But when you see these stories, it's like, oh, I'm not alone. Because isolation is another part of sexual assault, is hide it, don't tell anyone, and smile through it, internalize it. You know, and I think also sometimes that opening up can also open the doorway of, okay, that wasn't so bad. Now maybe I can talk to a therapist or something. So yeah, I think it can be positive to open up that much online. Depending into
a place to find resources as well.
Have you seen a difference maybe? I'm thinking of like in the experiences you may have encountered with sexual assault, and not saying that like you've experienced a lot of them or something along those lines, but in your life with you transitioning it to coming out and living your truth, has there been a shift in your approach to sexual assault or your experience of sexual assault?
Yeah, absolutely. I find that the sexual assault that happened directly related to me telling my ex, because we were no longer together and had a dinner, and he was like, "Are you dating anyone?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm gonna date women," because he'd always knew I was bisexual, and it was like, "Oh, that's awesome."
Right? Yeah.
And I remember his body language changing, and it was the first time where I'm like, wow, just that very real life experience of seeing how objectified I was to him, that I was something to have. And when I said, well, I'm only going to date women, I remember his body language changed. And it ended that night with him assaulting me. And it was directly related to that. It was him needing to prove, because one of his comments was, oh, I wasn't man enough. And so there was a different level of aggression that I've never experienced before. Now, and I've experienced that multiple times, not assault, but I mean just seeing a man's body language change when I tell them, or their demeanor, or just, oh, so you just haven't found the right man, as if somehow they can fix that. And so that causes me actually, and I've written about this online a little bit, that when I'm around men, and if I haven't built trust with them, I don't come out. I mask myself as a cisgendered female, even though I hate it, because that's where I feel safe. Because I don't know what their intent is, and I've actually experienced aggression, anger, body language changes, comments that just, they're real life experiences. So I, with all the privilege of being a very femme presenting white person, I can mask that and hide, even though inside I'm like, everything about this is uncomfortable, but my safety matters more.
I was like, it comes down to that safety.
Yeah, and so I do that a lot. I hide it for safety. That if I'm in it, I've even told friends, if you know my pronouns, I'm non-binary, but if you see me in a situation where I'm not correcting, do not step in. I'm doing that for safety.
Okay.
And
That's
they're
powerful.
like, wow, my cisgender or straight friends are like, never even considered that as a possibility. And I'm like, I didn't until I came out. That because, I've had someone like helping at an event, and they're like, oh, we should go out. And I'm like, I date women. And they're like, slammed something down. They were angry. And in that moment I went, I'm going to leave now.
Yeah.
And then the extreme side of actually having an assault directly related to the fact that I told them I only want to date women. And so it's like, oh, there has to be that layer of protection where I use my privilege of what I look like to, it's actually a safety thing. So, yeah.
Gillian, what about for you? Have you noticed, have there been any, changes for you in like going from being single to in a relationship? Like, what has that experience been like for you?
I feel like the biggest change is honestly the amount of time I spend like walking on the street. Like when I used to live in a city and I, was like I had a scooter actually, and I remember like first of all that was like people could not comment on the scooter, blah blah blah. There was a lot of harassment that came with that. Obviously that was not a safe feeling, but, just walking down the street, waiting for the metro, all that type of stuff. It was just like a constant, I saw someone on Twitter yesterday say, their daughter's 13 and, they just asked why people, basically sexually harassed her on the street. And it's like, I was probably 11 when I started getting sexual street harassment, and, didn't pretty much constant, if I left the house and was going to see strangers on the street, like in any volume, like I don't want to say expect because that's normalizes it, but I would not be surprised to be harassed. And I, went through different phases of, being polite and like, just like trying to kind of sneak away like a little mouse as fast as possible. Then I turned around and I would curse in people's faces, tell them I didn't ask them, stuff like that. And not suggesting that's a safe thing to do. It worked out fine for me and it felt good at the time. But yeah, and so I think there's so many layers to it, being alone, being with other women, presenting in a certain way. I think, and that intersectional element of, gender presentation or sexual orientation. I don't wear my sexual orientation or, anything remarkable about my gender on the outside. I used to be like much more femme presenting, and I think, there's just people who have issues with power and gender, like are going to have issues with sexual orientation. That power and control element, like, oh, now, this is somehow a threat to me or my masculinity or something that you aren't interested in me. And so, I remember one experience when I was on the scooter and this man came up to me and was asking about the scooter. It was always like, oh, how much gas does that thing use or whatever. And then all of a sudden it's like, he's in my personal space. He's asking me if I'm married. And I'm like, yes, which honestly was created so much safety for me, which is so wrong. It is so wrong that me saying that I have a husband, like really turned down the temperature in so many situations. But it is what it is, and it was true, and people can say it even if it's not true, again, that's putting on a mask and being inauthentic, which sucks, but, sometimes you have to stay safe, but he was not, this for him, that was not a de-escalation. Then it was like, oh, well, is he this way or is he that way, or I'm better than him or whatever, and he's touching my scooter, he's putting his hand on my scooter, and I'm just talking to him, I'm trying to talk him down, or, at the time I just experienced that I was like paralyzed, and I just spoke to him, and then he, eventually I kind of shimmied away from him and scooted away, but I got back to work and I worked at a gender-based violence organization at the time, and I was like, I was very hard on myself about not having them like back up, leave me alone, I'm driving away now. And one of the therapists who worked there said, you have to trust yourself to keep yourself safe. And so for all you know, if you had said that to him, he would have hurt you. And so, I think it's great to empower yourself and to holler back if you want to, but there is also nothing wrong with putting on a mask and being polite as a tactic of de-escalation and as a tactic of your own safety. So don't feel like you are any less than a full authentic person because you have to put on a kind of armor to protect yourself. And so, luckily now I live, in a house, I drive a car to work, I wear pants and, I usually am with like a mixed gender group. And so, I don't experience it, and I'm older, like I don't, I'm sure that has something to do with it. And so, I don't experience as much harassment on the street, but yeah, and I've been fortunate in social situations. Like I'm an introvert, so I don't let a lot of people into my life. I don't spend a lot of time in super social settings, and I think it's wonderful that people do, but obviously the more people you interact with, the more likely you're to meet, a bad one. So yeah, that's my experience.
I think that's really good advice, though, that, sort of like reading the room, like knowing, taking those measures to protect yourself, sometimes they may not be what would be considered, living up to your authentic self, but you want to make sure that you can continue living your authentic life, and maybe in that moment you have to protect yourself.
And not everyone deserves to know your authentic self,
Exactly. It's a privilege to get to know
Some
get
people
to know you.
Right.
What about you touched on normalized sexual assault, and you said that as well. What does normalized sexual assault look like? I think that's part of the real life, the real world experiences, or the times where sexual assault has been so normalized that it's part of the process. Especially thinking you said 11, you were in your youth when this started. I'm just
Yeah.
I mean, you were kids.
Well, I mean, too, you have a daughter who's almost 21. Did you ever have a conversation like that with her? But I mean, in other cities and settings that you lived in, where maybe she went to school alone or rode her bike outside by herself, did you ever have a conversation with her about any of these things?
She had,
did she ever come to you and tell you about an experience that happened to her, and how did you deal with that?
So we have had, numerous conversations along this line, and we only have lived in a subdivision, where your neighbors are right there with other kids, maybe for I think 3-4 years, when she was about from 6 to 10. And so, she had never at that point came to us that something was, somebody treated her different or was looking at her or something along those lines. It wasn't until she was probably in high school and she would come home, and there was one story about...
Is she living where you currently live now?
No, outside of that one time we lived in a subdivision, we've always lived in the country, and we've never had neighbors or anything like that. So there hasn't been that level of, you're going to walk... walking down the street in the city. It just doesn't happen when you live in the country.
There's no one there.
There's no one there.
Just going to be harassed by a goat.
Yeah. So, well, she had talked about how a boy had approached her at school, and she didn't like the way he approached her. And so we were talking, and she considered it to be aggressive. And, we were like, well, what, let's break that down. It's we have to, we were coming from a space of, we were teenage boys, and the engagement with a person you're attracted to and what that looks like. And so we were talking to her about from that perspective, and what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate, and things like that. And she was completely oblivious to seeing it from our perspective, which makes sense because we didn't see it from her perspective as well. It's that would be considered rude or inappropriate. And at the time we were he's just being a boy. He doesn't understand how to talk to girls.
You're a little bit more educated now, I hope.
Well,
because back then, what I'm hearing is what you're saying was oh, he pulled your hair and pushed you just because he likes you.
Yeah.
Which is something that our culture has normalized so much.
Totally normalized.
No, he's being a little asshole, and yes, he's being aggressive, and everything that you're feeling is right, that he should not be treating you like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was more of he came over and slapped the table and was like, "Hi, I think you're cute." And there's this whole she was not prepared. He's in her personal space, and and he didn't know how to say hi and how to get her attention, so he slams his hand on the table.
Go back to our conversation from last week.
And there's this huge shock factor, and so she is totally thrown off by that, and is don't talk to me, and completely,
Did you tell him
and totally
what's wrong with you?
Yes,
you do not approach me like this.
But I think that brings up an important point, and it's a shift that we're starting to see, is that the normalized aspect of this is the weight of preventing this falls on the person who's being victimized, primarily females or those who present femme, and it shouldn't be. That conversation shouldn't be boys will be boys, because that's how it's normalized generation after generation, that we have to keep dealing with this. That I'm dealing with the dads and my daughters are dealing with the sons, that we give boys passes that, well, they're aggressive and it's okay and you should be flattered. No, I am not going to be flattered if someone barges into my space and demands my attention, because they've done nothing to earn that. And it also shows a complete lack of respect, and it continues that power dynamic that
Very that.
I, because of my gender or what people assume is my gender, I hold the power in this space. I get to take up room in your life. I get to demand your attention. I get to keep going. And we have to stop that conversation because we're exhausted having to spend every day of our life analyzing if it's safe. I'm a runner. I literally plan out when the seasons are changing, I plan out my runs by checking my weather app to see when it's going to be light because I will not run when it's even dusk or dawn. What's it going to look like if I need to get gas at night? What's it going to look like if I walk into a store and a guy's following me? Do I take the long way? Because I've had that happen where they just kind of look. I cut runs short because a dude wouldn't stop following me. We're exhausted having to spend every moment of our life on alert, and men need to take up the weight of this and start changing that conversation. Talk with your friends, because another normalized aspect of this is like slut shaming online. And I use that word for empowerment. I'm not calling that because everyone be yourself, but I'm saying that, you know, there is almost this thing of, well, look how they're dressed. I can say that. They shouldn't dress that way. They shouldn't act that way. They're with this person. And everyone's like, oh, well, that's okay. You know, there's just so many ways that, like, just these small little things that I don't think men realize is so normalized with you. Mm-hmm. So the thing is, I think the question needs to switch is, what is normalized with men that you need to stop disrupting? Yeah. Because we're tired. We're so tired of this.
And you can't be, you know, you shouldn't be the ones carrying the brunt of changing it.
But we are.
Yeah. So the other problem with, like, the, you know, kind of creating a violent startle in someone and saying, oh, it's because he likes you, is it's kind of marrying together basically bullying. I mean, not basically, bullying and romance. And it's like, then there's this, then I think kids get this messaging that, like, if you're scared of, you know, a boy, if you're a girl and you're scared of a boy, then he likes you. It's like, ugh, like that's right. That can't be the message that we're sending children. And then people judge people, especially women, for being in abusive relationships, like, oh, why don't you leave? And it's like, well, because for lots of reasons having to do with safety, and we could have a whole other conversation about that. But one, there's this intense cultural message that romance is scary, and that if a boy or a man is willing to stalk you and not let you talk to other men, it's because he's jealous and that's romantic. You know, it's blending like violence and romance in a way that's really, really troubling. And yeah.
It's also super been ingrained just in our culture. I mean, you even hear it from, like, you know, women. Mm-hmm. You know, I remember, like, when I was younger and stuff, like, you know, I've always been, like, super faggot, but, like, I'm so gay, girl. But a brother, and he was, like, you know,
like shooting,
not feeling stuff, and, you know, and, like, he would chase girls or whatever. Like, when he got older, he'd, like, ask girls out, and, like, even my sister or, like, my aunt would be like, well, she said no, I mean, just ask her again. Maybe she'll, like, you know, you just got to be a little bit nicer. And I'm just like, she said no.
Like, why do you have to go back?
You should take that as a no, you know. But, like, even females were like, or women were telling him, like, all these things to do. Be more romantic. Do a nice gesture. Do all these things. And I remember thinking, like, she doesn't like you. She likes Jacob. She's never going to like you because she likes Jacob.
Right?
Like, yeah, leave her alone. And also, why are you wasting all this money? Like, after Jennifer, she likes you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Speaking of the wasting money, it's like when I used to go to bars and I would get scared when someone would buy me a drink.
Yes.
Like even if I watched the drink report and all that, which is insane that we have to, like, teach young people to do that. Watch your drink to make sure no one drugs you. It's your responsibility. You know, but even if that were a factor, I would be like, oh God, where is this going? You know, like, where is this going? When are you going to corner me in the bar? You know, and I mean, fortunately, I never had a super direct situation, but I definitely, like, eased myself out of a number of situations that I could have seen going in a pretty negative direction. Because I just err on the side of, like, not, like, And those might have ended up being people that I would like getting to know, but I chose not to even risk getting to know them because I didn't want to be in a situation where there would be some expectation.
Yeah. I mean, that's a real, we've had that conversation with our daughter about, she's going off, she's at college, and, I mean, there aren't, as far as she says, there aren't a lot of college parties or things going on, and we know on campus, there's nothing going on campus anyways because of COVID. But, that's conversations we've had. If you do go to a college party, you need to, control your drink. Nobody else makes it. The fact that we have to have that conversation.
Yeah, it's here are steps that you need to do to not get raped. Instead of telling boys, don't fucking rape. What's wrong with you?
That's it, yeah.
When a girl says no and she's not interested, walk the fuck away.
Yeah.
And leave her alone.
End of story.
It sucks that, that's still our culture, that you have, we have to do those things.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not even just, I think being gay, being queer is I never want to correlate it to identical things or whatever, but I mean, I've seen this happen in gay bars where, drunk gay boys want to molest another gay boy, and this guy's, being on, this side of the bar as opposed to that side for the past 20 years, you get to see so much because you see the progression. Bartending, you see guys come in, they seem normal, they seem nice, put their hands to yourself, they seem like gentlemen, and then the drunker they get, the more abrasive and sometimes gross, and you're just wow, I totally pegged you for not this person, but here we are.
Yeah.
And I know many times that I've stepped in and I was yo, bro, stop talking to him. He don't want to talk to you. Go away. He doesn't want to drink. He doesn't want another shot. You need to walk away. Wow.
Oh yeah, there's times when I used to go out that the bartender could be your best friend. A good one to really watch out for stuff. And I can remember being out with friends and how even going to the restroom, it would be just okay, everyone, here's all the drinks, cover them, nobody leave, come back, everyone okay, where the drinks left. I mean, it just this whole thing, because it can happen so quickly. And it's things people don't realize. And yeah, it's a lot of work sometimes to find safety out there in ways that I don't think people realize. Just the amount of thought that goes into it. That there's very few situations in my life where I walk into and I just feel very calm and relaxed. I think there is always just an awareness of who's there, what's going on, do I know anyone, what to expect, or like I said, is it going to get dark soon and I'm alone? What's it going to be like getting home? I mean, like I said, it's just
even when I'm with friends, do I need to stop drinking because maybe my friend's too drunk and the two of us navigating drunk together is not safe? There's so many. I think we even correlated back to last week or the week before. It's I just left an institution that safety is top priority for the staff, for the clientele, for the customers, making sure that the people that were on staff are on staff at Woody's, where I worked out. It is a queer space and it is a safe space. They definitely branded themselves as a safer space, making sure that people are not being harassed, being misgendered. People are not trying to force anything. Consent's a huge thing there. Even, we've had people be this person grabbed my ass 3 times. The staff will come over and be hey, will you come over here and talk to us for a little bit? And what's going on? You need to make some apologies, you need to correct your behavior, or you need to leave.
Yeah.
But I mean, I feel like it's kind of up to all of us, and it's really something that I love, that we can have these conversations and talk, but it really is going to take the whole entire village to get together and start being no, boys will not be boys, and maybe we shouldn't have to have a conversation about you going to a self-defense class because you present female. Maybe we should tell boys just to not be assholes and not rape people, and when people say no, they mean no.
Yeah.
And not try again in 5 minutes, or
let
me have a couple shots and see how I feel then. No, I meant no.
And for allies and the bystanders speak up and say that's not cool, and I ask if the person is okay and all that stuff as well.
Yeah, I think that that's part of that first step in normalizing that support, as opposed to allowing that normalized sexual assault to continue to happen, and start breaking up that chain.
And I know that I've done that before. I've been out somewhere in the river market and it's later, and I see a woman and I see another guy. I'm hey, are you okay? Just to make sure. But I think it's always, power in numbers. And I feel like the stronger that we are, like we're stronger together.
Mm-hmm.
And so just being able to empower and see another female identifying female, just to even give you a look. I know that that's a huge thing because I used to hang out with some of my trans friends that I don't hang out with much anymore, but like when we would go out, I didn't realize when we first became friends that we would hang out a lot and drink and do whatever. And then like, I started migrating, like, hey, let's go to this bar. And they're like, no. And then I realized like it was really traumatic for them to go to a straight space, number one, because of non-gender neutral bathrooms, the harassment they receive. And I was like, oh, fuck. To me, I never thought of that because I never had to deal with that. But also I was like, no, you are allowed to have fun everywhere. And if that means that when we are out together having fun at a space that isn't curated for us, like I'm going to make sure that I pull back the reins on my fun so that you can have fun, so that you know that you belong everywhere. And that's just, I think, a part of being a fucking decent human.
Yeah.
It's like helping each other out, looking out for each other. And then I don't think I was ever harassed. But when you were talking a little about being assaulted at bars, I totally forgot, I think when Power first opened, I used to go to one of the bars there a lot. And I had friends that worked there, and I had friends. And one time, and this guy that I knew that was one of the bouncers, we were friends. Saw him every weekend, hung out, was with a group of friends. And I remember going into the bathroom to use the restroom, and it was just me and this person in there. We were just joking around over whatever. And he grabbed me and spun me around, held my arm behind my back and was joking about having sex with me. And I was like, what are you doing? And he was like, oh, come on, you like it. And I was like, get off me.
Whoa,
and I remember freaking out. And I remember going to one of the bartenders, and I was like, this just happened to me. And also, my 3 gay friends, I was like, we're leaving. And they're like, what's wrong? I'm like, we're leaving now. We're just leaving. And I remember nothing ever came of that, but I remember I wouldn't go back to that bar for 2 years. And my friend was like, what happened? And I didn't even want to talk about it then.
Yeah.
I didn't talk about it with I think I told my friend Joey maybe 6 months later. He was like, what happened? And I told him, and I was like, I remember crying and freaking out. It was 6 months later.
Well, it's a total disempowerment.
Yeah, it was scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the important, that is something that to realize is it's not people be like, oh, they're just really attracted to you. Mm-hmm. Or when my perpetrator said, I can't help it, you're just so hot, it becomes sexual, but it's not. It's about power. That in that moment when I said, when I took away myself as an option, that I wanted him because he was male and it was, he felt disempowered because I said I wanted to date women. It was, oh, I'm not man enough. Because if I was, you would only want me.
You're not right enough.
Yeah,
really
and so it is important to realize that it is very much a power dynamic. Because I think also for people when I learned about that, because I'm actually a certified victims advocate and stuff, and still learning this stuff, but I think when it is seen as something based on sex or attraction, that might be where that shame piece of, well, the way I dressed or the way I appeared. And it's nah, I've been harassed in sweats and a baggy shirt and a hat. I've been treated with respect in a skin tight outfit. I mean, it's the person's behavior, and it is about power and control. And so I just say that hoping that people realize, that people who've been assaulted, that there are a million things we do every day to be safe, but in the end, these things can still happen. You can do every safeguard. I mean, before that evening started, I didn't foresee that night happening the way it did. And looking back, there was zero I could have done to stop it. There was zero. There was nothing in that whole line of events I could have done, because that was the mindset there and the intention, and it happened so fast. You're just like, oh. And so,
was this from somebody that you knew previously?
My ex-husband. Yeah.
And that, I think, Gillian, you've spoken to this, that individuals who experience sexual assault, it's usually from somebody in their close circle, somebody that they know.
Yes, please.
Yeah, by significant, the vast majority of sexual assault is by someone who's known to the victim, and I think that's a great point that there really is no prevention strategy. I mean, you can do things, and when I talk about like certain patterns in my life that I think have created less street harassment. Like I'm not saying that I never was harassed in a parka wearing pants, like in the middle of the day. Like, they're at the end of the day, you can't stop it from happening on the victim side. It's not your fault that it happened. So how could you stop it? And so I think there is this also messaging around like, oh, well, take self-defense and don't walk at night and blah blah blah, because it's terrifying to think that there's nothing that we can do to stop it. And so, again, we need to be realistic and focus on prevention and cultural change and, and all those types of things, and not glorifying, like, I mean, when I was in high school, truly, like, forcing a girl to have sex with you was considered cool. Like, it really was. And I mean, it's just like, I truly hope that is no longer the case. But I mean, I know, like, the way we would even talk about that now is completely different. But I do think, the cultural shift, I mean, the law is not going to fix, very many problems at all, if you want to know the truth. It's really the culture that has to change. And legal options exist, and they should exist, and they need to be valid for people, but the culture is what needs to change.
Yeah. And exploring those legal options don't always feel safe either.
Exactly.
That can be re-traumatizing. And so
I
it's
think our
important.
legal system's kind of set up
Very
sometimes to do
much.
that.
And so it's important that if someone tells you, and they also say, well, I didn't call the cops or anything, don't use that to minimize, because the legal system doesn't really help victims. Instead, they find I've always heard it's the crime where the victim bears the weight of proving they didn't do anything to make that happen. And that can be re-traumatizing in and of itself. So yeah, it's important to realize that everyone's going to get through it their own way.
Is there a financial aspect to that too, for victims or survivors to like pursue, criminal action or a legal case? Like, that comes like you need financial means to make that happen as well.
There are good resources. Like I know Rosebrooks, Safe Home, two local domestic violence agencies. They do have court advocates. They'll help with the legal aspect. And typically, if someone's been assaulted and goes to the hospital, they're not supposed to receive a bill.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's supposed to be covered under, it's like the Crime Victims Compensation Fund. They're not supposed to be billed at all. So they try to remove that barrier, but the process in and of itself, questioning by the police, can be very hard.
Impersonal.
Because trauma can make you just spew out whatever in that moment you can think of, and then 2 days later, your story may change a little bit, and suddenly so you lied. It's like, no, trauma makes your brain remember things differently in time. And so it's just, there's so much pressure for such a little possible outcome of any type of legal justice that a lot of people don't. I didn't call the cops. I took a bath. I mean, there was no chance in my brain I was going to even dial a cop. So.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I just keep thinking too, I always think that people that commit crimes usually tend to commit crimes again. And people that usually tend to hit women or assault women or stalk women, they're not it's not usually just, they just focus on one woman. They've done this probably to multiple people throughout their life. And definitely stepping forward is a really difficult choice and decision sometimes for women, but also it's kind of I don't know, just putting them in that box and letting people know that this person did this because 10 to 1 there's someone else is that person did that to me too.
Yeah. But that's also I mean, it feels unfair to put that on the victim, and I know that's what you're saying, but it's I mean, as a survivor myself, it's oh, then there's all this added, oh, well, if you don't say something, then it's gonna turn to someone else, and that's somehow gonna be your fault. And it's I'm just trying to survive, man. I'm just trying to heal and live a normal life and not have this, hanging over my head or affecting me. And that's all survivors have to do, is take care of themselves, and the system and the culture and the accountability for offenders or perpetrators needs to take care of the rest. But it is scary how much impunity there can be, but the system is so problematic for all the reasons that Misha was saying. It's just it is no small thing to participate in the system. They don't. I think the system tries to make it easier, but there are some inherent things like just some inherent pieces of the legal system that are so problematic for survivors.
Yeah.
I think part of that responsibility lies too with like the allies and people that you confide in. I know that, holding people's secrets and helping them through their trauma, like as a friend or as a family member, but also to like, I feel like we just witnessed, a few weeks ago of somebody that sexually assaulted a couple of people, and then all of a sudden, other people that were not sexual assaults, like, oh, well, I've seen him do that before. I was like, then why didn't you say anything?
Yeah.
And it's part of like our culture, even as allies and friends. Like if you see somebody like harassing a woman, step in and be like, are you okay? Is this man with you? Are you guys friends? Like we let things go. And I don't know, is it because we're afraid to get involved? Are we too busy to help another human? Are we, I don't know.
I think it's that passerby. It's that, the person driving by the train wreck and you're watching it. Why traffic slows down when there's an accident on the opposite side of the road and there's no reason for traffic to slow down. Nobody gets out of their car and helps those individuals. They just drive by really slow to witness and to watch it and to video it or talk about it, but they don't actually do anything to help those.
It's like something like you walk by and you see a crime and something pulls you out of your human self to be like, oh, whatever, and then like you like kind of dehumanize that situation, like out of your comfort. I don't know. It's hard for me to comprehend, not because I just wasn't like, I didn't grow up like that. Like my dad always told me like, you see something. If you think that something's wrong, speak up. If you have questions about something that you learned in school that you don't agree with, raise your hand.
Ask it.
And it's weird because like, sometimes like the kids in school that are labeled the bad kids, it's like, we're not really bad. We're just listening to our own intellect and asking questions. And I'm not necessarily like causing a ruckus. I'm just asking like why you're being a dick to this person, or why are you doing these things that are wrong?
I think the other thing is you have to be, as a bystander, you have to be willing to feel awkward or feel like, oh, I was wrong, and because the thing about a lot of sexual assault situations too is like, and this gets into the victim's head too, is there's not always a bright line. Like that's where I was describing like the scooter incident. It's like for 1 second we're having a nice conversation, the next second he's like talking to me about whether I really love my husband and whether I want to run off with him and being in my space and stuff. And it's like there can be some shades of subtlety to that. Like there's nothing wrong with buying someone a drink, but if you're buying a lot of drinks, they're obviously not interested. You're hovering in their space. You're talking about now they owe you. And so as a bystander, like you have to be willing, like you said, to say like, are you good? Okay, good, we're good. Then and you don't have to, be like, oh my God,
drawing your sword.
Right.
You can just keep it.
Get your taser out. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Just start pepper spraying.
But I can honestly say that times I've had where someone has stepped in like, are you okay? Is everything okay? I've never been angry about it. I've always appreciated, even if I said, yeah, we're fine. I can't think of a single, I was thinking about that I can't think of a single moment I was like, why are you in my space? I think it's always been like, thank you,
I think the times that I've stepped in too, even if they didn't need, like, I feel like there was just like, are you good? And they're like, yeah, we're fine. I'm like, cool. They're like, oh, thank you. Like, it's always been, I don't know.
I've never done that. I've never been or aware of a situation that's taken place to step in that way.
Yeah.
And I know my surroundings. I don't even. I always. I mean, working in the industry for so long, because you especially when you work in a bar, you always want to make sure that is this guy too drunk? Is he going to puke on the floor? Is he going to start a fight? Is he going to break a urinal? Is he harassing these people? Because I also deal with my money. If you're harassing my customers, they're going to leave. He needs to leave.
Yeah.
And also, if they don't feel safe, they're not going to come back to visit you.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess it was kind of selfish motivated, but
But the intention's
Still to make sure that people are safe.
Yeah. And there's very nice, neutral ways to do it. Like, hey, everything good here? Just to keep the mood light, because you don't know if then things aren't okay and the person who maybe is giving you those red flags isn't going to hurt them worse later. Like, what did you say? What did you do? So I think those neutral, hey, everything okay here? You guys need another drink, whatever. You know, kind of keeping it lighthearted as a form of protection. So, as you guys can tell today, it's very complex. This isn't like this is the guidebook. You know, it's so complex, but
I would say Ace, I mean, this was what, 2 weeks ago when like you presented the idea of like, why aren't we doing workshops to teach boys and men how not to be aggressive? Or
I think a part of it too is just like teaching. I feel like, you know, you think back, like, I don't know, like in our culture and how like girls used to go to like refinement schools
or home ec,
or like how to like, you know, like, I don't know, just cross their legs and like that whole kind of refinement. Like, why did boys never go to be like maybe you don't get into a girl's face and be like, what's up? What's your name?
Yes.
Like, I'd be like, you can like talk to people like normal people. Don't talk to them like you can still
like a social etiquette course.
Yeah, like you can still be attracted to people and like, I don't know, treat them like a human. Like you don't have to, you don't have to lead with like your dick. You don't, you know what I mean? Like you don't have to do that.
Seriously, yeah.
Like, I mean,
teach them consent.
Yes, consent is like such a big thing.
Just,
like,
God.
and also like I think just teach people like when people like dismiss you, like walk away. Don't like take it as like keep trying.
Yeah.
Like because they could be going through so many things. Like maybe they're, I don't know.
We're not interested.
Or we're not interested. 100%. Yeah. I've seen so many people like that clearly weren't interested, or people that were like wanting to be left alone because maybe they're having like, this has happened to me before too. And this is partially like of me like knowing too many people sometimes, or people like the whole social media and work aspect of me. Like people sometimes they think a lot, think that they know me or they're friends with me. And I'm like, no, like, you know, you may see me every week because you come to a bar that I drink at, or you may read my social media posts or follow me on Instagram or all these things and see all the best highlights that I like show myself, which is not really who I am, but that's just like, but like when I've been out with friends and like we're having cocktails or like we're having dinner and people will come over and start talking and I'll have to be like, it was really, really nice to see you, but like I did not come to dinner with you. I came with my friend. Maybe we can talk another time. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Yeah.
But like some people just don't get that social cue. Like you have to say that, and then sometimes you'd be like, "Well, you're an asshole," and I was like, "Well, you're fucking stupid because you didn't read my social clues when I was trying to be polite." Another thing too is when people ask me like, "What are you?" Like, but like, where are you from? And I'm like, "Oh, I'm from Kansas." And they're like, "No, but like, where are you from?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm like from Dodge City, Kansas. Have you ever heard of it?" Like, no, but like, where's your dad from? I'm like, Colorado. And so I'm like trying to politely or whatever, and they're just like, but like your like nationality. I'm like, well, I'm American. And I'm like, I'm giving you all these cues that I don't want to fucking answer your racist question. I don't want you to put me in a box of what you think you can and can't say in front of me because obviously you don't give a shit. But now that I've had this conversation, you're like, well, you're fucking rude. I'm like, you just have to talk to me like that. I just really like culture. So I'm like, really? How many languages do you speak? Well, English. How many countries have you been to? Well, I've been to Cancun. Go away from me. We're done. And like people don't understand, like I was giving you a polite way of like answering to, I don't want to answer this question, you weren't getting it.
Yeah.
And also you're ignorant and racist. Calm down.
Yeah, that reminds me of a conversation I had with someone on social media after I came out non-binary. One of my friends like, I'm so proud of you. And then someone else replied, but you look like a girl, what are you?
Oh my God.
One, deep breath. But I really like how I handled it. That's how I'm handling a lot that they messaged and went like, really, what are you? I said, I'm non-binary. But what I am is not interested in this conversation. There's a lot of great articles on Google.
Do not ask somebody what they are. Maybe ask them what they identify as.
Yeah.
That's a better question.
But in that moment,
what they are.
I was like,
it's atrocious.
You already lost all privilege to me, or take the lead of some of my friends. If they're asked for education, they include their Venmo and their Cash App.
Yes, I love that. Pay
so
for your time. It's not your job to educate.
But yeah, it was just, I'm not interested. Google has amazing articles.
Go. When people ask me any dumb question, Like you can either take out that small computer in your hand that has like all the information in the world, or you can Venmo me and I will tell you the answer.
That is,
Yes.
Oh,
Also,
amazing.
anybody's watching, never ask anybody what they are. Never ask anybody like any kind of like racial like ambiguous question, like where are you from, where are your parents from. That's fucking rude. Don't ask people that. Ever.
And don't ask people on another note, don't ask people with disabilities what's wrong with them.
Yes.
I also have an invisible disability, and like, you know, there's a ton of conversation in the disability community about like, if you go out with any type of mobility aid or anything, it's like, what's wrong with you? Nothing's wrong with me. I'm just a person, you know? It's like people have like the entitlement of feeling like, I'm not your friend. Like, if you need to know what's wrong with me, I'll tell you over a glass of wine sometime that you're paying for, you know? Like, then you'll know. Like, people, it's the same thing as like, I'm not the same. It feels similar to, you know, where are you from? It's like, I'm just a person who's trying to live, and I can't imagine why you think you are entitled to that information.
Yeah, it's always those are like the first like top like 2 questions I get whenever I first meet people. It's like, where are you from? And I'm like, oh, Kansas. No, but like, where are you from? And then people are like, well, what do you do? And I was like, stuff. Like, I do all kinds of things. Like, what are you talking about? Like how do I make money? That's like super personal. It's weird. I was like, I suck a bag of dicks every day. And like, what?
A bag of them?
I was like, I'm a CEO of IBM. I don't know. Like, what does it matter? Like,
I invented Post-its.
Yeah, I totally did.
I think very direct statements or even just outlandish answers can just be a great tool to disrupt in the moment. And also for people who maybe can be taught or just had a blip in their humanity to be awkward enough to realize, oh, that was really stupid. But this person actually went back to the post and wanted to apologize to the person, my friend who was upset by the comment, but not to me. And I went, okay, you're not on my friends list anymore. But yeah, you know, it does opening up about yourself at all on social media, to go back to that, sometimes creates that false sense of we're all really close friends. I can ask you anything you want. And I'm like, there are questions even my family is not allowed to ask me. You're not going to ask me what I am, which also leads to them wondering, what is your genitalia? Well, that's none of your business. You know, it is very personal questions that don't need to be asked.
Also, too, like, people are like, well, I can say and ask whatever I want. I'm like, that's cool, like, you can, but also, like, I have the privilege of, number one, not answering you, and also saying whatever the fuck I want back to you.
Yeah.
And, like, if you get pissed off, then I guess we're both pissed off, and you know how I feel.
Yeah. I think, you know, it comes back to what we're centered around with that consent. You know, as far as, like, asking those racist, like,
charge
questions that, you know, it's that consent that comes in part of it. They don't know you that way. They don't know who you are or how you identify. And making those assumptions and those race-baited questions, you know, that it's down to consent. It comes down back to that consent of, you know, can I ask you a personal question? As opposed to just asking where you're from.
I have so many times, too, when I first meet people and we talk for a little, like, can I ask you a personal question? And I'd be like, no. And they're like, what? I'm like,
you're shocked by by the fact that you have power within yourself.
I can say no. You're probably still going to ask me, but I'm not going to answer it because I said no. And now I feel like you're like question raping me. So stop.
Well, and something else I've said is people are like, can I ask you a personal question? I'm like, you can, but I'm not guaranteeing an answer. Because that could be a trick question because they may ask and then suddenly you're like, oh, I'm not answering that. And so I just put that out there. You know, you can ask whatever you want, but I may not answer you. And that way you just know.
I'm a very direct, fickle bitch because sometimes I will go out and I will like, hey, what's up? Talk to everyone, give you a hug. Sometimes I'll be with a friend and I'll be like, people will come over and like, please don't touch me. Like, what?
I
was
really
like
the mask.
Like, I gave you a hug like 2 weeks ago and I was like, cool. Well, I was a different person 2 weeks ago. Today I don't feel like being touched. So you're still valid. You're still amazing. You're still beautiful. You're still valid. I just don't want you to touch me today. Sorry.
Which should be
Not
fine
sorry.
and normalized.
Yeah.
That personal power that individuals have.
You don't know, like, my life. You don't know what I went through that day. You don't know how I feel. And today I just don't feel like being touched. And also maybe I don't feel like answering personal questions. Maybe I don't feel like having direct dialogue with you when I came with 4 friends.
No.
And that's okay. And that has nothing to do with you. It's everything to do with me. And you, like, digging is you trying to steal my power. And I'm just not here for that.
And I love that consent, the conversation is expanding so far to even, like I said, having friends say, do you have capacity today to talk about this? Can I talk to you about a topic that includes sexual assault? I love that because one, it makes me feel very respected, but also I like that I know I have the space to say no, or I can mentally prepare myself. If I say yes, like, okay, I'm ready for this, instead of you bombarding me and then suddenly I'm dealing with your trauma, my trauma, and I probably have tuned you out after 5 minutes because my brain is shutting down. And that's not fair to either one of us.
Like, I just came to Starbucks to get coffee. I didn't want to do all this.
And so I do think the consent part is important. And I do like that we had the discussion today that, start disrupting those conversations with your male friends. Actively disrupt them. I mean, don't just be like, let's talk later. Actively disrupt them.
Yeah.
Because,
in the moment.
In the moment. It's a teachable moment. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, or punish the dog 3 weeks later for what they did.
Yeah.
You got to do it right there in the moment. And like, what are you doing? Stop what you're doing. Let's talk about this.
I saw a meme that said so much of these types of conversations can be shut down between men with the simple statement of like, what the hell, bro?
Oh, yeah.
That they'll immediately, like, that's kind of a thing with you guys, I guess, that can just stop.
Like a check and be like, oh, what am I doing? What am I saying?
Yeah. And then,
I'm more like, you dumb bitch.
Right.
Did you just say that?
Gays.
Yeah.
So, in talking about like people reaching out to you and asking in a way that asks permission to have that conversation, like, do you have capacity to talk about this today? Do you think, or did you experience that before 2020, or has that been something that has taken place from 2020?
I experience it a lot more now, but I will also say that's because my friendship circle is a lot different than it used to be.
Okay.
That where I now have people in my life who are respectful, do have those boundaries, do place me in high regard to respect my space and my time, whereas I didn't before. And I think a lot of that did come out of 2020 because of I became a lot more outspoken with who I was, which caused some people to step back. But I also think living alone at a time when the world shut down, you get very reflective. And so I did a lot of self-work. And so my boundaries are very different now. Like I have them.
They're defined, right?
Yeah. And so that very much, that creates a different environment for my friendships to grow in a way that's healthy. And so I think it's both. I think 2020 led me to creating stronger friendships with people that mirror the values that I have for myself, as well as modeling it for me. The first time someone said, do you have the capacity for this? I went, what the hell is this going on?
Yeah.
I don't, but maybe later.
Definitely incorporate that.
And so some of that was also modeled for me. And it was like, I love this so much. So people doing that, keep doing it. If you don't, it's a simple statement. I think it's one of the best ways to show respect to another person you're talking to, especially heavy topics. Because talking about sexual assault is not, there's really no way to sugarcoat it into something nice. It's going to be a heavy topic, but and trigger warnings on post. Trigger warnings on post. Those are also another step of perspective. And then putting the actual content way far down so people can scroll right past. So for me, sharing, there's also ways that I need to respect anyone that may read that. And so it goes both ways, definitely.
Yeah, that's something I was wondering if that reflective moment that 2020 brought people, like, had an impact. Like, if you saw a change in the way people were interacted with you and approached situations with you.
Yeah.
So, and I love that that capacity question. I'm totally going to start using that and implement it.
Yeah.
Not just like leaving people on read or ghosting them, but like just I didn't know how to respond or how to say I don't have time for that right now without being rude or something. But I just don't have capacity right now to engage in this conversation. Pretty I like that.
2020 also, I think, was a time I've heard across the board of people stop pretending life was great, the Instagram photos. And so people, I think, got more authentic because we did spend a lot of time at home and in a space of reflection and also looking at life as things got bad of, you know, what do I want to do? Where do I want to go? What is the meaning of my life? And so I think it opened up more authentic dialogue with people.
I'd agree with that completely.
I spent more time outside. I got a little witchy. I feel better about it. I passed out free food.
Yes, you did.
I did a lot of like cool stuff during the pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I wasn't really at home much either. Like I did a lot of, we did pop-up testing with the COVID outreach. So we were still like out in the community.
I remember we got like 3 months off, and like I was still like nose to the ground working and doing a bunch of stuff for the community. But look at me now. Now I'm just hanging out, traveling. I want to think one of my favorite things that I heard today was from Gillian when you said that it is okay to mask yourself when you don't feel safe, and also too, it sucks not being able to be authentic and not being able to present how you want to present because of safety reasons or whatever. But also, I love that you said that not everybody should be able to get to be a part of your authentic self.
I love that too.
Like that's a privilege.
I think it gives, like it puts the power back in your hands of like, I am in control of who gets to see me and my authentic self. Like the power is ultimately always in your control. And I think a lot of times, you know, it's like, well, you were dressed that way, or you should expect people to talk to you that way, or you went into an all male space. Like, what did you expect? Like that, you know, gives that power back to that person. It's like, no, like they don't deserve to see me this way. They have no right to do this. So they don't get that side of me. I like that.
Definitely.
And I also want to say, like, it's along with that is such a moment of mourning the fact that we don't live in a world where you can just be your authentic self everywhere all the time. It's just such a sad tragedy, and you know, I don't want to like overgeneralize the, you know, authenticity piece, but just to say, like, from my experience, especially when it comes to sexual assault, sometimes you have to survive, and that's okay. And we should definitely have classes on how to not rape people and how to not sexually harass 11-year-olds on the street. But apparently, you know, we're not there yet. So in the meantime, you know, people have to prioritize themselves over other people or making other people happy, things like that.
But things like, you know, the Me Too movement, conversations like these, like, you know, those are ways to coalesce individuals, to have those conversations, to form those groups, you know, to make an impact in their community. And hopefully, you know, tell other people I don't have capacity to have that conversation right now, or asking for consent, you know, to engage in that conversation. Like what a different world it would be if those two things took place.
It would be a different world too if we, at least a few times in our life, stepped out of our comfort zone to help somebody else that definitely was out of their comfort zone and didn't deserve to be put in that position.
Yeah. I think that the point you made about being aware of what's going on around you and just asking, is everything okay? Just normalizing that part as well, helping.
And I just always think back too, like, what if that was my mother or my grandmother or my sister? There are times too, like, I remember that time that I needed help, and if somebody would have stepped in, like, it would have made a world of difference.
Wow.
It would have changed things.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank Gillian and Misha for being here with us today to talk about sexual assault and sort of like broaden, you know, this conversation to help other individuals continue the conversation on. And it is a hard topic to cover. We are going to come back. We'll have Montana on, it'll stream on a different day. It won't be on a Wednesday. But he'll be talking about virtual sexual assault and what that looks like on dating apps and the like. So stay tuned for that conversation as well.
Do you want to say anything before we go? Any last words?
No, just I am grateful for just the space online that's been given for people to share their story and kind of create those organic support networks. Yeah, I think it's important to keep sharing.
What about you, Gillian? Do you have anything you want to add before we go?
No, it's great to see you all.
Yay! It's always good to see you too.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. I guess I just want to say, if you see something, say something. We have to look out for one another. This conversation, I feel like, could go on and on and on, and that's kind of the point of Unboxed, is to unbox things, but keep conversation going and making sure that we are normalizing conversations like this and advocating for one another and making sure that we are not letting boys be boys.
Yeah, or perpetuating what's taking place.
Yeah. 100%.
So we'll be like April was Sexual Assault Awareness Month, so we are wrapping that up. So May is going to be focused on racial injustice. So we're going to be talking about George Floyd's murder. We're also going to be talking about racial justice and racial injustice and what that looks like, on our local community level. So if you have input, you want to be a part of that conversation, message us, slide into our DM, send us personal messages, tweet, comment on a video that you want to be a part of, you have something to share, and we'll try and set up a time to get you on.
Yeah, I'm excited.
All right, yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Are we done? I need to go brush my